I always knew my parents had favourites, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I found in their will. Please stay with me as I tell you my story, and please don't forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing with your loved one. My name is Eliza Thompson, I'm 36, and I've spent most of my adult life trying not to feel the sting of being second best. My brother Callum was always the golden child, charming, clever, and so good at pretending to care. I was the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who got things done but was never noticed for it. When our parents died suddenly in a car crash, I flew back to our small hometown to handle everything. I wasn't ready for grief, but I thought at least we'd face it together. Then we sat in the lawyer's office and my world tilted. The will was short. Everything, house, money, belongings, was left to Callum. My name wasn't in it at all, not one sentence. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Callum didn't even look surprised. He just gave that same fake smile he always did, like he knew this was coming. The lawyer handed me a small box, a cardboard box taped shut, with my name on top, for Eliza in my mum's handwriting. I took it back to the house. Everything felt cold and quiet there, like the walls were holding their breath. I opened the box on the living room floor. Inside were old photographs, me as a baby, mum holding me, dad teaching me how to fish. There were a few tiny things, a worn-out bracelet I lost as a child, a small painted bird I made in school, and a pressed flower between 2 pages of a book. At the bottom was a letter, torn, unfinished. The writing was shaky. It said she was sorry, that there were things I didn't know, that she wished things could have been different, and then it just stopped. I read it again and again, trying to understand, but I couldn't. All I felt was emptiness, not just because they were gone, but because I was never really theirs, not in the way I thought. I sat on the floor of the living room with the box still open beside me, the torn letter in my lap. The words swam in front of my eyes. I'm sorry, Eliza. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't. I thought I was protecting you. And then it ended. No signature, no explanation, just silence. The same kind I'd lived with my whole life. Growing up, I always knew Callum was their favourite. He didn't even have to try. Mum laughed louder at his jokes. Dad took him fishing, gave him the better bike, the better room, the softer words. I was the one they relied on when things needed doing. Eliza, can you help set the table? Eliza, look after your brother. Eliza, stop causing trouble. I learned to be useful because being loved didn't seem to be an option. Callum got praise for every little thing. If he drew a messy picture, it went straight on the fridge. If I brought home good grades, they just nod and tell me to keep it up. Once when I got sick at school, Mum asked why I didn't try harder not to catch a cold. I was 11. Now holding this broken letter, I wondered what else I hadn't seen. What had she meant by protecting me? I remembered Mum's old friend Jean, who used to come over for tea once a week when we were kids. I found her number in Mum's old address book and dialed. Jean sounded surprised to hear from me, but when I asked if she could talk, she agreed to meet at the cafe near the beach. She looked older, but her eyes were kind. We talked about the accident first, and then I told her about the will, the box, and the letter. She looked down at her tea. Your mum loved you, Eliza. I know it didn't always seem that way, but she did. Then why did she leave me nothing? I asked, my voice shaking. Jean was quiet for a moment. Then she said softly, your mum. She was scared of Callum in the end. I stared at her. What do you mean? She didn't say everything, but there were things she didn't want your father to know. And Callum, he could be cruel, Eliza, not just to you. That night, I sat alone in the dark, holding the letter again. Suddenly, it wasn't just sadness I felt. It was a crack in the story I thought I knew. Something was very wrong, and maybe it had been, for a very long time. I hadn't planned on staying at the house for long. Every corner held memories that hurt too much. Some sharp, others just quietly sad. But something kept me there, like a thread I couldn't quite cut. I started going through drawers, cupboards, even old storage boxes. I told myself I was sorting things out, but really, I was searching. For what? I didn't know. In the bottom drawer of Mum's bedside table, under some faded scarves and a pair of broken glasses, I found it. Her old mobile phone, the kind with a cracked screen and faded pink case. I almost put it back, but something made me turn it on. It took a while to charge. I sat on her bed, waiting, heart heavy with a quiet dread. When it finally powered up, Most things were deleted. No texts, no photos. But there was one folder still there. Voice memos. 6 in total. None had been sent. I put in my earphones and pressed play. Her voice came through soft, shaky. She sounded tired, as if she recorded them in the middle of the night when everyone else was asleep. There were pauses, long breaths, and sentences that trailed off. But what she said chilled me. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. The money's gone. I told Gavin the bills were paid, but they're not. Callum promised he'd help. He said he had it under control in another memo. Eliza doesn't know. I've hidden so much from her. She always asks the right questions, always sees too much. And then, your father never knew about the loan, about the truth, about you. That last word made my stomach twist. I played the recordings again and again, each time catching things I missed before. Little comments, hints, her fear, her guilt, her regret. She sounded like a woman carrying the weight of 1,000 secrets. And with every recording, that weight shifted to me. I stayed up all night listening. By morning, the sun came in through the blinds, painting soft lines across the floor. The house felt different. Not emptier, but heavier. Like it too, had been holding in these secrets all along. There were things she never said out loud, things she was afraid to face while alive, and now, somehow, they had become mine. The morning after listening to the voice memos, I wandered outside, needing air. The sky was pale grey, and a cold wind came in from the sea, stirring the trees and making the house behind me feel even more distant. I walked through the backyard, past the rusted shed, the broken swing, and into the garden. There was one patch Mum always told me not to touch, the old rose bed beneath the big gum tree. I'd asked her once why we didn't plant anything else there, and she just said, "That's Mum's garden, let it be." As a kid, I listened. As a teenager, I stopped caring. But now, standing there with the wind pressing against my back and her voice echoing in my head, I knew something was buried there. I went into the shed and found a rusted shovel. The soil wasn't hard, not after the rain, and I began to dig, deeper than I thought I'd need to. My arms ached, my hands shook, but I didn't stop. Finally, the shovel hit something solid. I dropped to my knees and cleared away the dirt, a small, dented metal box. It was cold in my hands. I brought it into the house, wiped it down, and pried it open. Inside was a single envelope, thick, yellowing, sealed. My name was written on it in Mum's neat, careful handwriting. Eliza. I opened it slowly, almost afraid of what I'd find. The letter was long, pages folded together, written in ink that had smudged in places. I started reading, and the world around me seemed to fall silent. She told me everything. I wasn't their daughter by blood. I was their niece. My biological parents had died in a car crash when I was 2. Mum's sister, my real mother, had struggled with addiction. My father had been her brother. When the crash happened, they took me in, quietly. No adoption, no legal paperwork, just raised me as their own. They thought they were doing the right thing. Mum wrote that they didn't want me to feel less than, didn't want the town to gossip, but it also meant I was never legally their child. That's why my name wasn't in the will. She said she tried to fix it, but life got complicated. Debt, lies, and her fear of the truth coming out kept her frozen. She ended the letter with a line I'll never forget. "We should have told you. You always deserved the truth, Eliza. I just didn't know how." I sat with the letter in my lap, tears falling silently. All my life I thought I wasn't enough. I thought I was forgotten. But the truth was more painful and more human than I ever imagined. They didn't forget me. They just never really had me to begin with. The letter had shaken me, but I needed more. I needed to know if it was all true, if I really was someone else's child, taken in, renamed, and forgotten on paper. So I began searching for my birth mother. Her name was Doreen. I found it buried in one of Mum's old medical files, listed as a next of kin from years ago. After a few calls and some online digging, I found her in a small care home an hour outside town. The place was quiet, tucked behind a hospital, with the smell of disinfectant and boiled vegetables in the air. The nurse warned me before I went in. "She's not always clear, love. Some days are better than others." Doreen sat by the window, her hair thin, her hands trembling slightly as she stirred tea she hadn't touched. I introduced myself, unsure what to say. I think I'm your daughter." She blinked at me, confused at first. Then her eyes narrowed, and something like recognition flickered through them. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. They promised you'd be better off without me. That was all she said, but it was enough. Over the next hour, in bits and pieces, I pieced together more from her rambling. She had struggled with alcohol, lost custody, but when she tried to fight to keep me, it was Margaret, my aunt, the woman I had called Mum my whole life, who stepped in, who said I'd be raised safe, loved, and clean of the past. But that promise came with conditions. No visits, no names, no ties. She was pressured into disappearing, erased. On the drive back, the truth settled like a heavy stone in my chest. It hadn't just been Callum pushing me out of the will. It wasn't just a mistake or something legal that was overlooked. It was a choice. Margaret had taken me in, but only on her terms, and in the end, she made sure I wouldn't inherit even the memory of being her daughter. She didn't forget me. She erased me, quietly, completely, and now I was left picking up pieces of a life I never truly owned. I didn't tell Callum what I knew. Not about the letter, not about Doreen, not about the secrets Mum tried to bury. I didn't scream or demand answers. I didn't want his lies or his pity. Instead, I played the role of the grieving sister, quiet, polite, helpful. He was too self-absorbed to notice the shift in me anyway. He'd won as far as he was concerned. He got the house, the money, the approval he always craved. I let him have it, but I wasn't staying in that house a day longer. I packed a small bag and drove north to the holiday cabin Dad and I used to visit when I was little. It was deep in the bush, not far from the coast, where you could hear the ocean if you stood still enough. I hadn't been there in years, but the key was still hidden under the third rock by the step, just like he used to say. The cabin was quiet and dusty, filled with cobwebs and old photos. It smelled like old timber and salt air. I cleaned up a little, made a cup of tea and sat by the window, staring out at the trees. Then I remembered something. One summer, Dad had joked about hiding treasure in the floor. I thought it was just a game, but now I wasn't so sure. I checked every corner. Under the floorboards near the bed, I found it. A small safe, tucked into a hollowed space. The code came to me easily. My birthday, the day he said I made him proud. Inside the safe were bundles of cash, worn envelopes filled with notes, and one small folded letter. For your freedom, Eliza. I wish I'd done more. That was all it said. No long explanation, no details. Just the words of a man who had known things weren't right and had tried, in his quiet way, to make up for it. I sat there, holding the note, feeling something loosen in my chest. He hadn't forgotten me. He hadn't looked the other way completely. It wasn't justice, not really, but it was something, a way forward. And now, finally, I had a choice. Not just about where to go, but who I wanted to be. Now that the truth was out, I didn't need to burn everything down. I just had to walk away and let silence do the rest. A week after I returned from the cabin, Callum invited me to a memorial dinner at the family home. He called it a chance to honour Mum and Dad, but I knew better. It was a performance, a gathering where he could play the grieving son while basking in the attention of people who didn't know the truth. I nearly didn't go, but in the end I decided to show up, not for him, for me. I wore a simple second-hand dress I'd found in a thrift store the day before, soft blue, with a tiny tear near the hem I'd stitched up myself. Nothing expensive, nothing flashy, just clean, comfortable, and quietly defiant. When I arrived, Callum was all smiles. He hugged me like we were close, like he hadn't erased me from our parents' will. I smiled back, warm and calm, the way someone might smile at a stranger they no longer owed anything. Dinner was lavish. Of course it was. He'd invited half the town. Talia, his wife, stood at his side, unaware of what was coming. I didn't say much during the evening, just made small talk, nodded, thanked people for their kind words. I waited until dessert to hand Callum a small gift-wrapped package. Just something I found going through Mum's things, I said sweetly. He opened it there at the table. Inside was a photo album, neat, black pages. At first it looked like family pictures, but as he flipped through it, his expression changed. There were photos of him cheating, hugging a woman outside a motel, kissing someone in a car. Others showed him pocketing money from the family business, stealing from clients, faking signatures, and at the very end was a single page, blank except for one typed line: "Enjoy what you didn't earn." I left before he could say a word, just smiled, waved to Talia, and walked out into the night. What he didn't know yet was that copies of every photo had already been mailed, anonymously, one to Talia, one to his boss, One to the friend he was secretly stealing from. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't fight. I just told the truth and let it land exactly where it needed to. As I walked away from the glowing house, I felt lighter than I had in years. Revenge hadn't been the goal, but justice was enough. The fallout didn't happen overnight. It came in waves, slow and sharp. A few days after the memorial dinner, the calls started. Quiet ones, private ones, then came the silence. Talia left him first. I heard through a mutual friend that she packed up and moved in with her sister. Took the kids too. No big fight, just a quiet exit. That's how you know it's real, when someone doesn't even waste their breath yelling. Then the business partner pulled out. Then the client who had trusted him with their savings. Friends started drifting away. He tried to deny everything at first, said the photos were fake, said someone was out to get him. But there were too many lies to cover, and too many people who now saw him clearly. I stayed quiet, said nothing, never admitted to a thing. I kept my hands clean, my smile soft, my distance sharp. With the money Dad left me, I bought a small weatherboard cottage just outside town, perched on the edge of a cliff where the sea crashed below. It was the same spot Dad used to take me fishing when I was little. Back then, I never understood why he loved that place. Now, I did. It was quiet, honest, untouched by everything. I spent my days painting the walls, planting herbs in the yard, and watching the tide come in and out like clockwork. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living a life that belonged to me. Then, one night, my phone rang. Callum. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. His voice was shaky. Eliza, please. I don't know what to do. I've lost everything. I listened. Didn't say a word. Just let the silence grow between us. Long and cold. Finally, he asked, "Are you there?" I ended the call. No anger, no revenge speech, just the sound of the wind outside my cottage and the sea roaring below. He had taken everything from me once, but I had something now that he never would, peace. And that, in the end, was worth more than any inheritance. It was late when I found myself reaching for Mum's old phone again. I'd tucked it away weeks ago, buried it at the bottom of a drawer in my new cottage. I told myself I didn't need to hear her voice anymore. I was done with the past. But some things don't stay buried, even when we want them to. The screen flickered to life, dim and cracked. The battery barely held charge, but one recording still sat there, unopened. I'd saved it for last, the one she never sent, the one simply titled, "For Eliza." I hesitated, thumb hovering over the play button. Then I tapped it. Her voice came through soft and uneven, like she was whispering in the dark. "I don't know how to start this," she said, her breath shaky. "Maybe you'll never hear it. Maybe that's for the best." There was a pause, a rustle of blanket. Then she went on. "I never knew how to love you the way you deserve. You were always so strong, so quiet. I mistook your silence for distant. I leaned on you too much, gave Callum everything. And I see that now. I think I always saw it, but I didn't want to admit it. I felt the sting of tears behind my eyes. Not because I needed her apology. Those words couldn't undo years of being invisible, but because I could hear her pain, raw and human. I thought raising you like our own would fix everything, but I carried guilt instead of love. And when it mattered most, I chose comfort over courage. I'm sorry, Eliza. You didn't deserve any of this." The recording clicked off a few seconds later. No goodbye, just silent. I sat there, holding the phone like it was made of glass, my hands trembling. The tears came slow and steady, not with anger, but with quiet grief. Not just for what she'd done, but for everything that could have been different. For the love that never reached me. For the daughter I could have been. For the mother she couldn't be. When the tears stopped, I looked down at the screen one last time. Then, without hesitation, I hit delete. It was time. Time to stop carrying voices that no longer belonged in my life. Time to let the silence stay silent. I stepped outside into the cool night. The ocean hummed in the distance. And for the first time, I felt free. The sun had just begun to set when I sat down at my desk, a warm cup of tea beside me, and the windows open to let in the sea breeze. The house was quiet, peaceful in a way that still surprised me sometimes. I took out a pen, a clean sheet of paper, and began to write my will. There wasn't much to list. The cottage, a few savings, some old things that had come to mean something over time. But I knew exactly where I wanted it all to go. I wrote slowly and carefully, naming a local women's shelter and a foundation for girls in foster care as the ones who would receive everything I had when I was gone. It felt right. It felt honest. These girls had no voice, no power, just like I once had. They deserved more. At the bottom of the page, I signed my name. Then, I added one last line. For those who were forgotten, like I was. I folded the will and sealed it in an envelope. Then I looked up at the photo on my shelf. Me and Dad standing near the cliff's edge, fishing poles in hand. I must have been 10. He was smiling at me, proud and tired. I remembered what he said that day, quietly, like it was just between us. You're the strongest person I've ever known. I believed him now. Do you think Eliza did the right thing by leaving everything to strangers instead of her family? Or should she have tried to make peace with Callum in the end? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Was it justice, or just another kind of loss? And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more emotional, real-life tales like this one.